economy. Obviously, one of the most unstable European nations to watch would be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, as all of their neighbors have potential designs on their nation with potential support from other great powers, while internal divisions are, as of yet, unsolved. The Habsburg Empire will either need to face reform or slowly wither away and die. Austria-Hungary would be the flashpoint of international tension, as Italian, Serbian, Romanian and independence calls overlap. Now, it's not too difficult to imagine that under Charles, the Austrian part of the empire starts giving autonomy to nationalities within their part of the empire, but the Hungarian part of the empire is where the real trouble arises. For centuries, the Hungarian nobility had enjoyed privileges within the Habsburg Empire, bribing them to remain within it. And these privileges were not something they were glad to give up. This conflict within the Austro-Hungarian Empire can go two ways. Either Hungary is defeated or concedes, leading to a reformed Habsburg-led federation, or the Habsburg Empire is, slowly, torn apart from both in and outside, leading to the slow collapse of the state. Whichever is more likely depends on Russian and mainly German attitudes towards the empire, but my guess is that the main great powers wouldn't want to see Austria collapse fully out of a fear of collapsing the entire balance of power with it, and so something akin to a Habsburg federation endures. We have a similar story with the Ottoman Empire. Weak and on the decline, but they have recently lost their most troublesome holdings in the Balkans. While there are still religious minorities and a Turkish-Arab divide within the empire, it is not too difficult to imagine the Ottomans reforming their now Islamic-centric empire, allowing it to endure to some extent. But where with Austria there was a chance that they would resolve their issues internally, this isn't the case for the Ottoman Empire. The survival and success of the Ottoman Empire depends fully on the attitudes of Russia, Britain, Germany, France and Italy. Germany and Britain would be on the side of keeping a strong Ottoman state intact, but Russia has designs on the region which may very well be supported by the French if push comes to shove. It is very possible that conflict erupts over this Ottoman issue, but if we assume that peace holds in Europe, we will assume that the Ottoman Empire will also manage to endure. During this time, Russia will grow into a way different power than what we saw in our own timeline with the Soviet Union. Russia's rise to power eventually was unstoppable. They had a huge population, resource deposits and foreign backing from France. The road towards progress would be difficult under the rulership of Nicholas II and the Russian aristocracy, and by no means does the Russian economy suddenly explode in this period of peace, but Russia's economy would rise gradually. But when comparing this Russia to the Soviet Union, this alternate Russia would still be considered a backwards economy, as the Soviet industrial push was undeniably very impressive, but it also led to a very unhealthy economy, mainly concerned with heavy industry and somewhat disconnected from the rest of the world. This alternate Russian economy, while slower and somewhat more backwards, would be integrated into the global economy and gradually develop its economy. Expect a slow rise in Russia's power, but don't expect the Russians to catch up in 1930 to the economies of the West under the leadership of Nicholas II and his aristocracy. This peaceful Europe scenario I will end in the 1930s, as everyone is shocked that the peace even lasted this long. Germany is the largest European economy, but Russia's rise is undeniable. On the world stage, Europe, for now, remains all-powerful, as the US remains an isolationist power. Economically very powerful, but mostly unconcerned with the goings-on of Europe. The concept of Europe and great power diplomacy as seen during the 19th century are still alive, and Wilhelm II and Nicholas II are regarded as the great peacemakers.
Join Google Fi Wireless and get $650 off Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra with $200 off instantly. Do more with Samsung's innovative Galaxy AI. Circle, highlight, or tap to search without switching apps. Plus zoom in from a distance in low light with Nightography Zoom. Order yours today and save with Google Fi Wireless.
Join AARP for instant access to discounts on everyday purchases. Gain valuable tools and tips to manage your money.
Now alternatively, let's assume that around 1920 an alternate great conflict breaks out. How would this look? The core alliances would still be Germany and Austria against France and Russia. Even if Germany still invades France through Belgium, the British could likely be much more reluctant to join the conflict in this alternate timeline. A Franco-Russian victory would more than likely entail a full dismemberment of Germany and Austria-Hungary, to the benefit of the already rising Russian Empire, and adding rich and developed German provinces to the Russian Empire will put the Russians in a position to dominate Eastern Europe. But alternatively, supporting the Germans would mean supporting the strongest European economy in becoming even more dominant. A German victory would mean that France would be reduced to a second-rate power, while Germany receives new land from the Russians, only making Germany even more powerful in the European balance of power. Whatever side the British support fully, that will likely be the side that emerges as the European hegemon, which Britain will struggle with containing further. So, let's first see what may happen if Britain remains neutral. The war obviously still starts with a German offensive on France, hoping to knock the French out. Even without British help, I consider this unlikely to succeed, especially since the few years that Russia has gained means that Russia will be even faster in mobilizing themselves and putting pressure on Germany's eastern front. I still think that the Russians are in no position to combat the Germans in a long-term war, but at the start of the war, Russia would undoubtedly perform better, meaning that Germany has to pull even more forces from the Western Front, allowing the French to eventually solidify their lines. The fact is, the Schlieffen Plan was an outdated plan, and with this additional Russian pressure, I don't consider the Germans reaching Paris as a very likely outcome. But from here, the German situation is incredibly advantageous when compared to our own timeline. Without the British coming to the aid of the Entente, the Germans have local naval supremacy to dominate the Baltic and even Atlantic Oceans, blockading the Germans and the French to some extent, while keeping trade with Britain and America open for the Germans. When it becomes clear that the Germans are the favorites to win, Britain may start providing some economic support to the French and the Russians, but this would not be enough. Soon, the war would seem hopeless for the French and Russians, especially as the Ottomans get involved, while Italy doesn't join the side of the Entente, as it seems way too risky. At this point, all of Europe sees where this war is going, and few like it. It is very well possible that at this point, under the threat of the British entering the war, an end to the war is demanded, giving Germany an ultimatum. Discuss a reasonable peace with the Entente powers, or Britain joins the war, threatening Germany's seemingly guaranteed victory. A reasonable peace deal may see some very minor border changes in Europe, while Germany gains minor French colonies overseas, mostly preserving the European balance of power, while still affirming to Germany that they are the dominant European power. In a timeline where Germany denies this British arbitration, or Britain joins the war from the start, we will have a World War I mostly like our own timeline, but with a slightly stronger Russia, with Germany losing naval supremacy and eventually being strangled into losing the war. Personally, I prefer the outcome where Germany gets their reasonable victory. From here, predicting forward becomes very difficult, and as such, I will end the scenario here, as the video has gone on for long enough. This was a difficult script to write, and it was a lot vaguer than some of the other videos I do, but World War I not happening at all is just such a foreign and difficult thing to imagine. There were simply so many flashpoints for potential conflict, with no nations willing to give the others an inch. But with that, I will end the video here. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to check out Atlas VPN via the link in the description below. If you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing and leaving a like and a comment to help out against the algorithm. A special thanks to Lord Atlantean, Yoshi, Jonathan White, Predator, Greyshot151, John, Prezemek Petrotsky, Firelord Marklin, Dinkelberg, and Slayer for supporting me on Patreon. Consider supporting me there for about a week worth of early access to videos and a shout out at the end of every video. Again, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.
If you need insurance from a change in life, like you left your job, got a husband or wife, if you turn 26...
Out of all of the many fan games that spawned from the Five Nights at Freddy's series, none are more iconic than Five Nights at Candy's. As one of the first ever original fan games, Five Nights at Candy's gained loads of attention for its quality in comparison to other fan games at the time. So much so that it ended up spawning an entire trilogy of games. However, these games have one big problem. They're just way too easy.
Yep. They can't disable phones. Seriously? Rat will break my phone, I guarantee you. Smash my shit in half. I know you can. Dude, what? I can just sit here. I'm chilling. Are they that stupid? Y'all are like the final bosses of the series. Wow, they're actually that f***ing dumb.
If you've played any of these games up to the point of reaching their max modes or final nights, you know that all of the FNAC games have an exploitable strategy that you can use to make their hardest challenges really easy. But there was potential in the groundwork that was laid by Emil Mako, and if you looked at the Five Nights at Candy's games from a different light, focusing on the gameplay structure of the games rather than the actual horror aspect, there was a lot of potential here. So Mr. Manatee, Nephirite, and Sunken Studios would go on to create Five Nights at Candy's but better. FNAC but better dramatically reworked the gameplay of all three games, added new characters, and most importantly to this video, made each game way harder. On their own, the hardest challenges in these games take hours to beat, solidly placing in the top 30 to 50 range on the FNAF Max Mode list. And for a sense of reference of how difficult some of these nights are, Post Shift 2's hardest night is ranked at 105 and 5020 is ranked all the way at 92. But what if just completing these max modes wasn't enough? A few months ago, I did a challenge known as the FNAF Lock Challenge, where I completed every single max mode from FNAF 1 to 6 in a row without dying. This challenge was one of the most mentally taxing and overall hardest challenges that I've ever attempted. So what if we took the idea of FNAF Lock and applied it to games that were way harder? And with that, the Gauntlet was born. The Gauntlet is simply that, a gauntlet of every single max mode from the FNAC but better series, starting with Blood 720 from FNAC 1's Custom Night, then Ringing Nightmare and Rat and Cat Theater from FNAC 2's Custom Night, then Rat and Cat All Challenges and Puppet Master All Challenges from FNAC 3's Custom Night. And then finally, if all of that wasn't enough, under all of the pressure from beating all of these max modes in a row, a 5-minute speedrun of Candy's Adventure, an 8-bit style minigame from FNAC 3. Now, unlike the FNAF Lock Challenge, we can't choose the order that we play these games in. So to structure this video, I'll explain each of these max modes in their predetermined order, how they work, how to beat them, and my experiences with them throughout my journey with the Gauntlet. Starting with Five Nights at Candy's 1 and Blood 720. Even though the order of the Gauntlet is fixed, Blood 720 would still be the max mode that I would play first if I was able to change the order. Logically, we'd always want to do the hardest max mode first and leave the easiest ones for last. And while that's already half true with this predetermined order, I'm confident that to a player starting all of these games with no prior knowledge, Blood 720 would be the hardest max mode in the Gauntlet. To even begin to understand the gameplay of Blood 720, we first have to understand the changes that FNAC 1 but better makes to the original game. Then we can talk about the max mode itself. I'll do this for all of the games in this video, so don't worry about getting lost and not knowing what's happening in any of these games. In the original Five Nights at Candy's, the gameplay was very similar to FNAF 1. You had 3 doors in your office and a camera system with a night vision feature. When someone got close, you'd have to close a door on them. Unfortunately, with the exception of Blank, every animatronic in the original FNAC works the exact same way, making for a pretty dry gameplay loop of just checking on Blank and abusing the way the power drain on the doors work. However, in FNAC but better, everyone was given unique mechanics with an entirely different gameplay loop. Firstly, there are some universal changes in FNAC but better. When you're just sitting in the office or using the cameras with the night vision turned off, you won't use any power whatsoever. The doors have also been completely reworked. In the original FNAC, doors would heat up and drain more power the longer they were closed. However, because of the way the animatronic door timers worked, you could abuse the insanely fast cooldown of the doors and just leave them closed for most of the night. Now in FNAC but better, the doors will instantly drain 0.5% power whenever you initially close them, and will drain an additional 0.5% for every second that you have them closed. You'll soon realize that FNAC but better reworks these games to make them all about speed.
Can I take your order?
And in FNAC 1 specifically, you'll always be closing doors to instantly open them, as animatronics that attack your doors will always instantly bonk and leave. Except for 2 of them, but we'll get to them later. Now let's talk about our animatronics. Out of everyone in the game, Candy and Rat are the simplest and
Gonna take your order. And you still on the damn 6. Can I take your order?